Molly was busy in the kitchen. She was making a celebratory dinner for her sons, Benjamin and Curtis. Most people would probably see the reason for their celebration as rather ridiculous, but it wasn't so for Molly. Her youngest son, Benjamin, did great on his tests, and until very recently, his situation at school was quite different. Today's video is about how the life story of an old professor helped Molly change her life and the lives of her children. Molly was born in the slums and spent her childhood there. The girl didn't know her father, but her mother did everything she could to try and provide a decent life for her daughter. Unfortunately, there came a point when the woman couldn't do it anymore and simply gave up. Alcohol and drugs appeared in the life of Molly's mother. When the girl turned 9, her mother passed away. Molly was left all alone in this world, so she had no choice but to grow up quickly. The streets had become her school of life. After the death of her mother, the girl dropped out of school, so all the education she got was the 3 grades of elementary school. One day, a local homeless woman named Lorraine noticed Molly and took the girl under her wing. Lorraine was a strange but kind and wise woman. She never told Molly how she ended up on the street, but it was thanks to her that Molly didn't go into prostitution, like so many girls from her environment, and didn't start using drugs or alcohol. The girl always remembered the words of the wise woman, which she repeated often. It's always better to work with your brain, but if you can't, then pull up your sleeves and never complain. Someone has to do the physical labor too. So Molly didn't complain. She got her first part-time job at a very young age. She washed the dishes, mopped the floors, helped out in the kitchen, and walked dogs. She did everything to distance herself from her past life, to live like normal people. Molly grew up to be a good person. The young woman was modest, decent, and diligent, which is what earned her a good reputation. She got a job as a maid thanks to her good recommendations. One day, Molly met a man, William. She was 17. He was 25. He worked in a factory. It was the first and only love in Molly's life. Upon learning of Molly's pregnancy, the couple went to the city hall and got married. 9 months later, Curtis was born. And 3 years later, Benjamin was born. Molly was happy. She had a husband, 2 kids, and a home. She made a promise to herself to do everything in her power so that her kids got an education, which would allow them to earn their living using their brains. The woman never gave up, not even when William abandoned them. This happened when their youngest son turned 4. He simply left to be with another woman and forgot all about Molly and their children. Molly was heartbroken, but she knew that she had to pull herself together for the sake of her kids. Molly and her sons moved to another city. There she found a job and rented a small apartment. The pain her husband's betrayal caused her gradually subsided, and life in the new city started to get better. Several years passed. Molly was sitting in the kitchen and weeping softly. She was called into school again because of her youngest son, Benjamin. He was having a hard time keeping up with his schoolwork, which is why the other kids often made fun of him. Unfortunately, the only way of standing up to them that Ben knew was with his fists. Thus, Molly got called into the principal's office where she was told that it was Benjamin's last warning. If he ever got into another fight, he would be expelled. Molly was feeling helpless. She didn't know what to do, and she couldn't help her son with his studies because she was basically illiterate. However, she did her best to make sure her sons didn't know that she barely even knew how to read. The owners of the house where Molly worked moved away, so the woman had to look for a new job. She was offered a housekeeping job at Professor Brown's house. The first thing that struck Molly in the professor's house was his library. It was the size of Molly's entire apartment. The woman had never seen so many books in her entire life. The professor turned out to be a rather pleasant old man who treated Molly well. The man was feeling lonely and miserable after his wife died. She was sick for a long time, and the professor was always the one to take care of her. So the man enjoyed talking to Molly once in a while. "Mr. Brown, can I ask you a question? "Have you read all those books?" Molly asked one day, pointing at the many rows of books in the library. The man smiled and sat down. "Yes, dear, I have read them all, and probably as many more." The woman's eyes widened. Noticing the somewhat childish surprise on Molly's face, the man continued, "Books have played an important role in my life. They made me who I am today, them and my mother's faith in me." Molly looked questioningly at the old man. "According to my mother, I was born prematurely, and so I was a little behind in my development. My father and other relatives suggested that I needed to attend a school for children with special needs. No one believed in me, except for my mother. Despite all the hardships, my mother never lost faith in me. She always said that God had rewarded me with many talents and that I could do anything if I put in the effort. And whenever I failed at something, she stroked my head and said that I simply didn't apply myself fully. She started bringing home books. At first, she read them to me herself, making me tell her what I remember the next day. Then she taught me to read. I got so carried away that I started reading every book I could get my hands on. As you've probably guessed, I didn't have any developmental delays or problems at school." Having come home, Molly found her sons in front of the TV, as usual. The woman looked at the boys affectionately. "Guys, I think you're wasting too much of your time watching TV. I thought about it and decided," the woman said, turning the TV off, "you can choose 3 shows to watch during the week." The boys were outraged by what their mother was saying. "And what are we supposed to do with the rest of our free time?" "You can use it to go to the library. You'll read books and then write short reports about them for me," the woman said. Of course, the new rules were met with great resistance from Benjamin and Curtis, but the boys didn't dare to disobey their mother. To their own surprise, they soon started to enjoy reading. In the evenings, they rushed to read the reports for their mother. In addition to listening attentively to her sons, Molly always asked them questions and their opinions. She also asked the boys to come up with alternative endings to their books, stimulating them to use their imagination. Not a day went by that Molly didn't praise her sons, telling them how much she admired them and how smart they were, thus instilling confidence in them and making them believe that they could do anything if they only applied themselves. Molly always encouraged her sons to use the opportunities that she never had in her life. 6 months later, Benjamin's situation at school had changed completely. The boy became the best student in his class, and the celebratory dinner that Molly was making was dedicated to honoring Ben's success. The evening, as usual, ended with the boys telling their mother about the books they were reading and a heated discussion about them, as well as with Molly praising her sons and expressing her admiration for them. The woman was happy. She knew that her boys were on the right track. All the hard work the boys put into their studies wasn't in vain. Benjamin graduated with honors and got a scholarship to go to med school, while Curtis chose to go into law. Subsequently, Benjamin became one of the best surgeons in the country. There was a huge library in his house. And one day, when his little son asked him why he needed so many books, the man replied, "Books have played an important role in my life. They made me who I am today. Them and your grandmother's faith in me."